Good morning and welcome to Zen Fits here in Blackstone, Virginia, where everything fits if you're the center of your world, but then you're all at the center of your world, so everything fits. Anyway, I always open with this because I just love Zen Fits. Nothing fits, everything fits. It's the same fit. Anyway, the title of this talk is The Jaws of the 60s. The Jaws of... I hope everyone saw Jaws or remembers it, get some idea of it. It's pretty much of an iconic movie now. And it's one of my favorite metaphors. Now, there are two images in the movie. You know, when you Google up, when I Google in Google Image, I'll Google Jaws, and I get some images, and there are two that I keep on my desktop as iconic metaphors that capture the metaphor of the movie. Now, movies are metaphors, and a metaphor is something, a story that points to a bigger boat, that points to something beyond the story, while at the same time pointing to the story. So this is why most people can't understand metaphors, and particularly can't see movies as metaphors that can awaken you. All movies are metaphors, but only the great ones can awaken you. By that I mean the movie's kind of like a Zen cone that contains a contradiction in it that if you penetrate it, it will explode in unity. There will be an explosion of unity in the metaphor, the spiritual metaphor, so to speak. And but it requires a shift in the way your mind works. Instead of working analytically, oh, I know what that movie is, it's about yada, yada, yada. What else is new? Did you see this movie? In other words, you think you know what it is, you close it. And you go on. Oh, it was just about this or that, you know. What else? So let's move on. What's the next movie, you see? No. There's a contradiction in a movie. There's a contradiction in it, a nagging feeling of what does this movie mean? What is this movie about? You know, what is this nagging feeling that won't let me go? It's kind of like the detective inspector who has a nagging feeling about this particular crime that won't let him go, and everyone else is pointing to, oh, he did it, no, he did it, no, he did it, no, he did it. And the detective inspector says, no, hold, don't jump to conclusions, wait, sit with the anxiety, sit with the nagging feeling, stay with the feeling, and suddenly the explosion will happen. Oh, I know who did it, and he goes running off to arrest him. Stay with the feeling. So let's look at Jaws, if I can get around to what my topic is, the Jaws of 60s. See, I remember this. I'm fortunate enough to have been in my late 20s teaching high school to baby boomers in 1968. I was an adult in my 20s going through the 60s as the 60s went through them. So it's a part of my DNA. It's a part of my personal psychic history is the 60s, which started out wearing pinstripe ties and tweed coats and ending up at an ashram with Swami Muktananda. Watch Mad Men. It maps out the whole thing. Watch Mad Men again. It maps out the whole psychic trauma of the 60s. So what is the Jaws of the 60s? Well, let's get to Jaws for a moment. There are two images that I keep on my desktop with my other images that I use to salt my talks, so to speak. I'll pull up an image to kind of like fertilize my talk with an image. And one of them is the image of a woman swimming by a buoy and the jaws coming up. Like she's swimming up here, so happy, just so peaceful, and Jaws is coming up. And in the movie, it's kind of like Psycho. I mean, Jaws grabs her, and she's got this startled look on her face. What is this? And then suddenly she's whipped around, like she's whipped around by this force. Oh, and then disappeared. She's whipped around by this force, like this hand, this force whipped her around. And she was just swimming so peacefully, safely, you see. And this Jaws came up and grabbed her. The terror of being devoured by something impossible, something unknowable, something that cannot happen. It's like 9/11 was a Jaws. Suddenly we were eaten by some force and whipped around, you see, like a doll, like a demon shook us, grabbed us and shook us. What is this? So like the Jaws. And the other image I use is the startled look on the fellow on the boat when he saw Jaws, and he said, we're going to need a bigger boat. We're going to need more understanding. We're going to need a bigger mind. We need to go beyond our assumptions. Our assumptions are a little boat now. Our assumptions don't handle Jaws. Our little boat now of consciousness of the modern world, our little boat of our little ego. There's a collective and a personal ego. Our little ego won't handle Jaws. We need a bigger boat. We need a bigger boat, you see. So you have to get, the 60s was like that. Jaws was aroused in the 60s. In the 50s, we were all swimming around in a safe world, very puritanical, very repressive, but we were number one. We'd won the wars, you see. We were in a scientific utopia. Science won the war, and science will, by now, in the view of the 50s, by now we would all be Jetsons living in little, in a utopia, scientific utopia, being waited upon by robots, like royalty. We would all be living like royalty, being waited upon by science, by robots, by computers, you see. And we would all be just happy little families, you see. No more Jaws, no more terror, you see. We had defeated the Jaws. We had defeated Hitler. We had defeated Tojo. We had defeated Jaws, you see. But our boat was too small because we had aroused Jaws. We had aroused the tiger. And it exploded in the 60s with great violence. I remember the 60s, and we were being whipped around by one assassination after another, by one Jaws bite after another, the burning of the cities, the civil rights, the feminist movement, everything was just exploding, rock music, Vietnam, and everything was just being both tremendously creative and tremendously violent at the same time. We were being whipped around. And of course in the 70s it all just got scrambled eggs, and the conservative right came in to restore order, restore sanity, you see. But all that energy got channeled now. It got channeled into buying products. It got channeled into consumerism. It got channeled into greed. It got channeled into corporate expansion, you see. It all got channeled, where in the 60s it was more or less like awakening, mystical, gurus, yoga, an awakening of the spirit and a freedom, and then it all got channeled into social productions. And now, you see, even the 80s, so you got Steve Jobs channeled that awakening of the 60s into buying Macs. Remember the computer wars of the 80s between the Mac man And the PC man was buttoned up. He was a 50s man. He had buttoned up tie, suit, very intellectual, analytical. And the natural, and Steve Jobs, the Mac man, was natural, casual clothes, hands in pockets, intuitive. He was with the flow. Natural man. PC man, uptight. IBM man. Right there. So that whole channel, that awakening energy into buying computers. Commercials begin to channel that energy into products. The madmen mapped it out, you see. So we made Jaws safe by channeling awakening, by channeling the tiger into products, you see. But this awakening is always happening in different ways. But now it became politicized. So now, politics-wise, awakening is on the Republicans claim it. We are awakened. The liberals are the PC man. We're Mac men. We're natural men. Trump is a Mac man. Liberals are PC men, intellectual, politically correct, you see. They're not free like the Mac man, like the Trump man. It's mythology. It's mythology. If you don't understand mythology, you can't figure out what's going on. And if you can't understand, you can understand mythology by penetrating metaphor. So Jaws is a metaphor that continues today. Each side, what is Jaws but this awakened force from within that we cannot define? It's personal. It's collective. It's either wonderful, attractive, a call to adventure, or it's terror. It's terror. It's either wonder or horror. Either way, it's the tiger that cannot be contained by our culture, by the fishbowl of our culture. We're constantly transcending the fishbowl of our culture. And this is what Shape of Water was about, that movie. Culture, civilization, keeps creating a fishbowl to contain the jaws. But the jaws keeps growing. The fish keeps growing and will not be contained. So it leaps out or it breaks the fishbowl. You see, there are two ways to do it. The anarchist wants to break the fishbowl. The mystic wants to leap out. So anyway, I'm digressing, but I hope I'm keeping it kind of like together with this metaphor of the jaws. And we're always awakening jaws, which is both terrifying, the terror of madness, or the terror of being awake beyond awakening. To be awake means to be beyond the fishbowl, the container, the appearances. Awakening goes through the appearance of the world. Awakening goes through the fishbowl because it's transparent. It's transparent, the fishbowl. You can put your hand right through it. But anyway, so I digress. I hope you dropped in to get confused with this with me. Anyway, thanks for dropping in.